All right. Thankfully, nobody in just yet, which is good because it gives me time to adjust stuff. So I turned on my overhead light, but I'm seeing things are pretty washed out. Give me a second to see if maybe there's just stuff on my webcam. It's going to go dark for a sec. I actually think that helped a little bit. But overall, it's a bit too bright, so probably we'll have to keep working on that in the future. But for now, not too bad at all. I'm just going to mess around with settings for a second or two. Let's see. I was having an issue with it was a little bit too hard to read my chat, and kind of hoping that I can make it bigger. That would be awesome. And if I can't make it bigger, just hoping that I'll be able to see it a little easier. All right. That's not terrible. Oops. Oh, hi, Chuck. For the pre-stream Chuck action. Not really pre-stream, but nobody's in here, so it's a little bit pre-stream. So I'm going to be spinning the same thing I've been spinning for the past little while. So it's the same alpaca roving. Do that. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, same alpaca roving as last time. Let's end that up. So I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 more streams of this, and it should be like done, like potentially even live by then, which would be super cool. Oh, hello, Chuck. My cat's having a weird day. I bought her some of the catnip she really likes. She like does not care about catnip in any form other than this extremely specific, expensive catnip powder that nowhere sells. And I finally got some, and yeah, she was going crazy for a little while. And then she took a very long nap. Welcome. If this is your second stream, then welcome back. And if it's your first stream, then hello. Please feel free to leave any comments, any questions in the chat, any discussion topics, anything like comments I'm responding to in chat, because I realized that the VOD from yesterday's stream, you can't see any of the chats in there, so the context of a lot of what I say is lost. So hopefully we improve in user experience that way a little bit. As you can see, I also actually have the main light on this time. So it's brighter, but it's also really washed out, which is not what I was going for. But yeah, I'll keep working on it. I didn't feel like messing with it anymore and delaying the stream anymore. Anyway, so we're doing some alpaca roving. I've got this bobbin done. We finished this. And then I've got a partial bobbin I'm currently working on. It's from a 7.5 ounce bundle of roving. And I weighed it with my very inaccurate kitchen scale just before stream, and it's at 4 ounces now. So we should be about halfway done, which is pretty cool. That's only like 3 days of spinning and not a ton of spinning. So yeah, pretty happy with that. I spent what I should start prepping for the next thing once I finish this alpaca. And I settled on that Shetland Clone Forest cross. And I carded, I think, 9 Rolex. And they look really nice. So very pleased about that. It was really nice. I got to so the weather here is almost all the time. Very rainy, very unpleasant. And especially in the winter, it's usually like you just kind of can't go outside without the weather being terrible. But it was really nice and sunny. So I went outside. I found a nice alley to sit in where there was very little foot traffic and no sound of the cars, and carded for a while. It's very relaxing. A lot of bird noises. Spotted a couple nests. It's cool. I feel like when you live in the city, you kind of have to cling to what little you can squeeze out of nature. Because that's how I feel. So when I actually do manage to squeeze something out of nature, it's nice. That said, the trade-off is that it's boiling in my apartment right now. It's always does not help at all. But that plus the weather, it's actually sweating, and my heat is not on, and it's February, so very good. Oh, I forgot my drink. I'm actually gonna have to get up at some point and grab that because I left it in the freezer and it's a can. So somebody remind me in 10 minutes. Well, in lieu of any chat suggestions, I think I might talk a little bit about natural dyeing. Oh, hello. Zetra says hello back. Good to see you on the stream. I figure I might talk a little bit about natural dyeing, but if you have any discussion ideas, let me know. But and I was working with my favorite colors because I figured why not have a little treat. And most of the stuff that I've dyed that fleece with has actually been the same dye material, but where I live. And I had really in my dye career, and I kind of just got brown every time, which in retrospect is, I think, just due to inexperience and improper handling. And my inexperience was that I didn't realize you really have to treat each dye material like it's a fresh start, you've never dyed with it before. You really gotta experiment and figure out how it actually works, because if you just treat it like all the other dye materials in the past, you won't get its full potential. So with Oregon grapes, and I've found that this holds true with a lot of berries, so blackberries, cook them on very low for as little time as you can possibly get away with. And as soon as I figured that out, I went from getting brown from Oregon grapes, which isn't that's not a bad color to get, but it's also the easiest. I figured that out. I went from getting brown from Oregon grapes, which isn't that's not a bad color to get, but it's also the easiest color to get. So, at a certain point, you have a lot of brown, and you're like, well, maybe I could branch out a little. So I went from that to getting a beautiful yellow, really nice green, and a nice lilac color, and then sort of a sea foamy green. It's really cool. We've got a lot of different colors, and the lilac and the pH, which is not something I often do. I don't usually mess around with pH when I'm working with natural dyes for whatever reason. I kind of just prefer to let the dye speak for itself, I guess. And then there's also the fact that anything you dye or modify, I suppose, with a different pH after dyeing. Whenever you wash it, it's going to revert to the color it was before you did that. So if you like make a blanket pH changed dye and half of it isn't, you're gonna have to treat the whole blanket with that same pH of water, or well, with water with an added pH every time you wash it. So like, I don't know, it's a little inconvenient. Someone in chat says the video freezes from time to time on your end, but you're listening. Hopefully it's just you and not for everybody. But thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I've never tried dyeing, but I want to. You should try. It's really fun. And I'm almost positive that you have access to natural dye materials that you would never have guessed give color. Like if you eat onions, for example, onion skins are a super easy natural dye to work with, and they're probably what I would recommend. They're like pretty consistent in terms of the color that they get you, and you can get them in vast quantities, and they don't smell bad. That's a big one. One thing about a lot of dye materials is they don't smell great at all when you're cooking them. But onion skins smell like nothing, so that's a huge plus. I think the worst smelling dye material that I've used would probably be, and there's a lot to pick from. It would probably be horse chestnut hulls. They smelled really bad, and the longer I cooked them, the worse they smelled. And also the slimier they got. It was pretty gross. Most of them, like, they don't smell that bad if you don't mind it. Like they don't smell that bad if you don't mind it. Like if you're the one dyeing it, it's fine. But if you're the roommate of somebody dying, what my roommates have said, you get yellow colors from yellow skins, right? Can, yeah. Yellow is one of the colors that you'll get from a yellow onion skin. But depending on the mordant that you use, you can also get green. You can get sort of like an orange or reddish, like red color. And also depending on like how much dye you're using versus what the weight. The more dye, the more vivid the color. And so you can range from sort of like a pale wheat color to like a really vibrant yellow, for example, if you use a ton of dye. And then with red onion skins, it's a little easier to get that green, a little easier to get that brick red onion skins, which I always thought was a little weird. I guess it's like, I don't know, because dye is all about the chemical compounds. And I suppose it probably, like red and yellow probably both have the same chemical compounds for producing yellow, despite. Yeah, it's really, once you start getting into natural dyes, it's like this whole world of color opens up. And it's really enjoyable. It also helps that it's one of the few parts of spinning, like of the more, I don't know if advanced is the right word, but esoteric, maybe, parts of making your own clothes from scratch from wool that costs nothing. Like I have put maybe $10 this whole time into my almost $1,000 on weaving and well over 1,000 on spinning. But with natural dye. That was about all I needed. A couple of copper pipes for my copper Morton. So that definitely helps. And it also is like it's a good excuse to get out and try and identify the plants around you. Because like if you figure out what they are, quite a lot of plants, quite a lot of the ones that can be used for natural dyes have, like, it says it online, you know. So you might Google the name of the plant and then natural dye, and at least somebody online will have tried it. That said, I have found there's a fair amount of cultivars, meaning plants that are highly cultivated, and usually recently, like within the last century. There's tried making natural dyes with that said, like, there's nothing online saying they make dyes, but I gave it a shot and they did. So I think it's possible that because we've, as a species, or maybe just as a culture, we've stopped doing anywhere near as much natural dyes as what was done, like in the Middle Ages, for example. We maybe haven't tested the new plants that we've come up with, which is cool. Like, I mean, it's a little sad. It's cool in terms of, you get to discover new things. It's always fun. I really like the idea of finding my material just around. I won't lie. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's awesome just going down the street and you look over and you're like, oh, that's walnuts. If I collect the holes, I can dye with them. That's walnuts. If I collect the holes, I can dye with them. It's so cool. It gives a good reason to go on walks, or in my case, not walks, but rolls in my wheelchair. Like, it gives a good reason to get out and about, just see what's starting to come up, how ripe things are, if any of it has fallen in an easily accessible location, that sort of stuff. Definitely recommend getting into natural dyeing. It is important to have like you need to have a fan over your stove if you're going to be cooking on your stove, or else a lot of windows nearby that you can open, because you can make yourself pretty sick breathing in fumes sometimes, or at least I have. But other than that, there's not a ton of hazards. Like, you just gotta use your common sense. I'd say there's way more hazards in learning how to hand comb fibers, because I maimed myself multiple times when I was learning that one. And like, not since, but the learning stage was dangerous. Yeah, that would be my concern. I don't have roommates, but I have a very tiny apartment. Indeed, I also have a very tiny apartment right now. As long as you can air it out, you're good. I don't think the tininess of the apartment matters too much, unless it's like you're also on an inner no window like part of the building, in which case that might actually be a concern. But as long as there's windows and you have a vent over your or like a hood, I guess, over your oven, you should be fine. And you can also, like, to test it out, you can use the completely non-toxic dye materials. So onion skins, for example, completely non-toxic, and in fact food safe, and used in some applications as like a tea, basically. So, like, you could try giving it a shot with onion skins, and if you notice that you can't air anything out, then, well, that would be your answer, and at least you won't have exposed yourself to any toxic fumes. You have windows, it's more like you can't leave the room. It's also where you sleep. Yeah, fair point, yeah. would definitely stay away from any dyes that require like overnight cooking in that sort of instance, of which there are some. Um, like, well, onion skins are one, although for aforementioned reasons, they're probably fine. But like anything else that requires overnight cooking, you might not want to do that. But berries might also be a really good place to start in your case. Like once the berry season starts, because berries really only want to be cooked for a very short period of time. That's sort of ideal in your situation. And blackberries, especially, or like whatever plentiful berry you have, but blackberries especially only want like just enough time to release the color. And then if you keep cooking them, you're just going to get just sort of like a off brown. You wonder if you can get reds from natural dyes too. That reds are like the white whale with a lot of natural dyers, reds and blues. Like you can get almost reds, like sort of brick reds, you can definitely get. But like if you're looking for a good red, like a really vivid red, you really only have two options as far as I'm aware, and that would be madder root um, or cochineal, which is a type of bug, dead bugs basically, and you grind up the bodies, and it makes a very vivid red. But as far as I know, those are the two main ways you can get reds out of natural dyes, and neither one of them are very accessible to me, so I've never actually got there. Like a true blood red, it's really hard to get even with those. And blue, like you pretty much just have indigo and I think woad. I always get woad and weld confused, but I think it's woad are the two that'll give you really good blues. I've heard that black beans, if you soak them, you can get a good blue. I tried it once and I exploded the container it was in because I somehow forgot that they expand when you soak them in water. And then I haven't tried since out of fear of both wasting beans and exploding containers. So if you can avoid cochineal, you'd rather. Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I really want to try madder, but I don't think cochineal is on my list of things to try. Um, I prefer as little handling of bugs as possible, including dead ones. Something that I think is a fun project for any new natural dyers is figuring out like what colors your local area gives, because it's different everywhere. For me, it's lots of yellows and oranges. Like I could make yellow and orange all day pretty much just with whatever random stuff I find in the street. Um, but the place I grew up, not so much. Lots of greens there, which makes me wish I was actually a dyer back then, because I would have been really happy. But yeah, it changes everywhere. I think yellow and orange are sort of more cheaper, if that makes sense, like easier to get colors no matter what, but they're like they're everywhere here. There's so many different ways to get yellows and oranges, mostly yellow. And so many different yellows you can get too. I was not the biggest yellow fan before I started dyeing with stuff here, and now that I've achieved like I don't know a couple dozen different yellows, I think I have a better appreciation for the color, for its complexities. Black beans you can manage. Yeah, just make sure that you put them in a really big container, because yeah. You love a nice yellow. Yeah, me too. Me too. My favorite yellow that I've ever gotten has been with marigolds, dried marigold flowers. I grew them in my garden back when I had a garden, and I would like pick them as they came up. And the thing with marigolds is the more often you pick the flowers, the more frequently they flower. So if you don't pick the flowers at all, you're just gonna have a few sad ones. And if you like pick them as soon as they pop up, you'll have tons. So I was doing that for the better part of the growing season, and I got quite a lot of marigolds. And I dyed some Rhea lamb's fleece with it, and it was just the most beautiful, like the most beautiful yellow I've ever seen. Like if wool was the color of sunshine, it was that. It was really nice. There's a lot of yellow flowers, daffodils being another one of them. Sunflowers, I think too, but I haven't tried that one, so don't quote me on that. But there's a lot of flowers that are good dye materials for sure. One problem I keep having when I'm trying to record while spinning is that I like always forget to move it to the next hook, and I'm getting super uneven bobbin winding at the moment. It's kind of bothering me. It's fine though. Sunflower dye sounds so regal. Yeah, it does sound regal. I mean, I love sunflowers anyway, but like imagine growing them just for the dye. That'd be so cool. And like that'd be one of those cases where it's quite possible that different varieties of sunflowers would give you different yellows. Like mammoth sunflowers might give you a different yellow than just your average sunflower. Same with dwarf sunflowers. So that would be super fun to experiment with. I know that different varieties of thyme give you different greens. Thyme, the plant. Because I've dyed with different thymes, and like you can get more of a yellow green or more of a like brownish green depending. And also the age and the season changes that too, but still. You didn't even know sunflower varieties. Yeah, there's so many different varieties. It's really cool. I feel like because there's like they have the ability to get really tall, people were immediately like, "Oh, I bet I could make these massive," or "I bet I could make these tiny," and they did. It's cool. One of the earliest memories I have is of visiting my grandfather, and he loved sunflowers. He always had sunflowers, and he was growing these mammoth sunflowers at the time. And I was maybe like 2 years old, something like that. And we went to visit him. And I remember thinking they were trees because they were so tall. I mean, obviously, I was like, up maybe 2 feet tall or something like that. I was quite short, but they were very big sunflowers. And I was at that age where I was like, if it's a tall plant, it's a tree. So I would always be asking to go see the yellow trees in the garden. I don't know. I love sunflowers. Still working on it. I can't really tell if you can see what I'm drafting or like what my yarn looks like as it's going in. I kind of hope not because it's really uneven still. I was noting last night I was having difficulties keeping it even due to various issues really, but like it's not gotten any better at all. But I think if I two-ply it, it should even out okay. We'll see. I feel like I always end up saying this. Like, anytime I'm spinning, I'm just sort of kicking myself over the inconsistency. And then usually, once I've plied it and finished it and like actually started working with it, it's fine. Like, there's no noticeable problems really. But the spinning stage always gets me so worried that I'm making a completely useless yarn. You can't judge. You started spinning just a few months ago, so you still make pretty bad yarn. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Nothing wrong with bad yarn, though. Like, I've made some bad yarn, and then I've also, like finding a good way to use bad yarn is what makes it not bad yarn anymore. So, like, I've made some really over twisted yarns, especially early in my spinning career when I was still figuring out twist a lot. And those over twisted yarns are like, they're so rough. They kind of hurt to work with sometimes, but it turns out they're great for bags. Like, they make awesome bags. They make awesome handles too, as long as you do something slightly softer around the part you'll actually be holding. Or like underplied, slightly underplied yarns can make nice scarves, because underplying will make it a little bit softer, so you can take advantage of that. And hats don't exactly need to be durable, so you can make a good hat as well. I think one of the things that like has really helped reassure me as a spinner is that there is a use for every possible yarn. Like, every possible yarn, even super lumpy, thick and thin, like on accident yarns. No matter what, there's always a use for it. It's just about finding that use and then not kicking yourself over it before you start. Okay, like finally caught up here. It does still kind of suck when it's really inconsistent though, because it sort of like removes chain plying as an option for me. Because that always makes it even more obvious. And it's like that's when I will notice. That's when I will not be pleased. And it's not even that I like chain plying, but it's just nice to like not remove options before you even know how you're going to apply it. And I don't know how I'm going to apply it, although I'm not going to chain ply it. But I've been thinking two ply, but I don't know. We'll have to see. For now, the ones you really use are short stuff that go into emergency string stock. Yeah, fair enough. You only know one kind of plying for now. That's also fair. As long as you know how to ply in some way, that'll get you going for a while. It's like, I feel like it's like with casting on, if you knit. Like, there's so many ways to cast on. And I personally have been knitting for about 10 years now, give or take. And I only know two ways of casting on. Like, I've been consistently knitting for 10 years, and I've cast on so many times, and I only know two ways of doing it. And one of them is the thumb cast on, which is like the most basic beginner one. And the other one is the Turkish cast on for socks. And that's been enough. Like, I have not actually needed to ever pull out another cast on, like at no point. So, you don't need to know everything to make it work. Oh, I just remembered my drink that might explode. put it in the freezer to cool it down. I will be right back. I really don't want to explode my thing, so give me like 2 minutes. Or no, 20 seconds. Okay, I'm back. And it didn't explode, which is awesome. I was actually pretty worried that it would have exploded, so. So here's what it's looking like. I'm never going to be able to get it to focus, but you can see it's like, I don't know, 2/3 of the way full, 3/4, something like that. Let's see. You don't knit, but a friend just gave you a whole bunch of needles, so that'll come. Sweet. Yeah, I hope you enjoy knitting if and when you do get around to it. I love knitting. Knitting has been a constant companion for me for a while now. Yeah, we're definitely getting there. Like at one point I couldn't I could barely even hold this, and now it's like I can very nearly close my fingers around it. Well, I can't bend my hand to show you that, but yeah, almost. So getting there, but it's not gonna fit on 2 bobbins, which is what I was afraid of. I mean, I knew that it's 7.5 ounces, but I was hoping that it would magically fit on 2 bobbins anyway, and it's not looking like that's gonna happen. It's kind of hard. Like, I feel like I play the same stupid little game every time I use a large amount of fiber, because I only have 3 bobbins for this wheel, and that's all I've ever had, and I don't think I'll buy more. Like, if I was gonna buy more, it would have been wiser to do so quite a while ago, and now it's like I probably won't be able to spin on this wheel after a year or 2, so it seems a little pointless to buy more now, but like, they're not very big bobbins. I think the most I've ever managed to fit on one is like 2 ounces. And granted, that depends on a lot of different factors. But yeah, so I'm definitely not gonna fit them both on 2 bobbins. I guess I'll just have to wind it onto something like I often do. That's all right though. I could wind it into ply balls first, maybe. But that's not a terrible option. I kind of like winding ply balls because it's not too painful. And if you have 2 full bobbins to ply off of, then you don't even have to do a plying bracelet first. So that really helps. So I guess that probably is what I'll do if I go for a 2-ply. And I think I will. Because I was like sort of artificially 4-plying it just as a test. And it was just too thick. Like, all of the applications for alpaca that I'm excited about would work better with a thinner yarn than a thicker yarn. So yeah, we'll see. So on my way back from doing a bit of carding outside, I found some yard waste. some very exciting yard waste, which was like basically pruned branches from a very young branches, I guess, very thin. And they must have just been pruned because they were literally not there when I was headed to my little back alley, and then an hour later they were there, and I think I've got some spring frames. They're currently drying, so we'll have to see, but I'm excited about that. You have a dumb question. No such thing. How do you get a big skein from several bobbins/balls? How do you reattach them? That's a really good question. It's not dumb at all. So it depends is the answer. If it's wool and it's non-superwash, you just felt it. So basically, like, say you've spun and plied. You've spun and plied one bobbin's worth or one spindle's worth or whatever. So you're going to wind it off at that point and then spin some more. And once you've got everything done and wound off, then you basically just take the ends and you splice them. So like pull the plies apart a little bit. And then using either water or spit being less like hygienic but more effective, you put them on your palms and then briskly rub together and felt them together that way. And it's not super noticeable. Like I do that all the time, and I don't think I've ever actually noticed in a finished article of clothing or whatever a spit splice section. So it's pretty invisible. But yeah, you literally just felt them together. Now, if it's something like linen, as far as I know, you can't. But that's not really a huge issue. You just leave them separate, and then when you're actually working with the yarn, you just do whatever you would normally do when going from one skein to the next. In my case, that's typically just hold two yarns together, work a few stitches, and then let the old yarn go is what I usually do. And that's pretty invisible too. And it's just as strong as a splice. It really doesn't matter. You can do that with wool too. If you can't get the felting to work for whatever reason or don't want to try it, you can do that too. After plying them, yeah. If you want like a super big singles, then you don't have to do it after plying. But typically, like, say you have 5 balls of 2-ply yarn and it's all like the same batch and you want to just have one big ball, you literally just attach one end to the first ball, spit splice and then felt, and then wind that onto that first ball, bring in another ball, do the same thing, wind it onto the first ball again. So you can get actually infinitely large skeins that way, which is something I wish that I had known that when I was a beginner drop spindleist right at the start of my spinning career, because I felt super held back by the size of my spindle, but I didn't actually need to be. I just didn't know that. Yeah, no problem. You tried linen just once, but you'll try it again. Cool. Yeah, linen's hard to master. But it's worth it though. Like once you figure it out, it's really fun. But it is definitely less forgiving than wool, for sure. You wondered because you've seen people with gigantic, very long skeins that clearly drop spindles can't handle. Yeah, that's how they do it typically, is splicing. The other way, the other workaround is just a spinning wheel with jumbo flyers. So some jumbo flyers can hold up to 8 ounces. This is a bobbin that holds 2 ounces. So 4 times bigger, basically. And you can get an awful lot of yarn on one of those. So that's the other way to do it, but jumbo flyers and jumbo bobbins, because you have to buy both, They're pretty expensive, so that's not something I've ever tried. So yeah, it's pretty much just splicing, and some people will just tie knots. That's like my least favorite method of doing it, because then when you're actually working with it, like now you have a knot in your yarn, whereas you could have just overlapped them, or sewn in the ends instead. So I don't really do that, but I know some people do that. And if it works for them, then who cares, right? It's their yarn. But yeah, it's pretty much just like physically attach one to the next, which is, I think, such a simple explanation that like it seems like it won't work, or at least that's what I thought. Like it did occur to me to try that, and then I didn't, because I was like, well, obviously, like people would have said something to that effect if that actually worked. But it does work. It's just like spinning is such a niche hobby that there's a lot of basic information that would be really helpful to beginners, that isn't readily available just because of the nature of the beast, I guess. But there's no bad time to learn like important spinning info, you know. I keep forgetting what hook I'm on, and then I stop the wheel so that I can be like moving it to the next hook, because my last hook's worth was way too much. Like it sticks out farther than all the other ones, so it's throwing me for a loop here, which is like literally at least half of the reason that I try and keep even ridges on my bobbins is to prevent me from doing that. The other half being that it runs on better and you don't have to have as high of a tension. You're so glad you got into it. Yeah, into spinning? Yeah, me too. Complete life changer. Like it's such a meditative act, but then it's also such a creative act when you want it to be. And it opens up like all of these possibilities that you would not have access to unless you had a very patient and giving spinner friend. And like that's really it. Yeah. You're not good with manual hobbies initially, and it's nice to discover that you can do some. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm having more and more time with manual hobbies, and like at this point I'm not even trying any new ones. Like there are some I'd love to try, and I'm not going to, because like the time that it'll take me to learn that, I could have spun a bunch of yarn. So why bother? You don't get how knitting or crocheting are still well known, but spinning way less so. That's an interesting, like, it's an interesting explanation, which I only know because I've spent way too much time just sort of looking into the history of these things. The reason that that knitting and crochet are still a thing in a way that spinning kind of isn't, is that when like we entered the industrial era, one of the very first things, like right at the beginning of the industrial era, and maybe even considered pre-industrial era actually, that we invented was the spinning machine. And we did have proto knitting machines for a while there, but they were basic. They couldn't do everything, and spinning is so much more labor intensive than knitting or crocheting that spinning was sort of the first thing to go. So basically, as soon as people could stop preparing their own fiber, which honestly, that's the more time intensive part of spinning. Like prepping the fiber takes 2 or 3 times as long in some cases as spinning it does. So as soon as people could do away with that step and just get on with knitting themselves a sweater, they sort of decided to do that en masse. And then as, more and more people moved to the cities, more people were sort of out of the loop of the agricultural cycle, I guess. Like if you're not seeing a sheep every day, and if your neighbors don't all have sheep, and you don't have sheep, then like what is even the point of learning to spin? So I think it's that. Like I think that is the main reason that spinning hasn't survived in quite the same way that knitting and crochet have. But I also think like knitting and crochet, they were sort of dying for a while there. And then they're definitely getting more of a revival. Like when I started knitting and crocheting, like a bit over 10 years ago, nobody knew what I was doing. Like some people, I guess, some knitters and crocheters pretty much, but like your average layperson did not know what I was doing. Whereas now I get lots of people like at work or just in public being like, oh, is that knitting? That's so cool. I wish I could learn. So like they know what it is, even though they don't do it. Probably because of social media, which is cool. And I think that like, I don't know, I think that same thing might be happening to spinning very slowly. I hope so. Yeah, like just in the last 10 years. Which is why I think a lot of it is social media, because social media has gotten so much more ubiquitous in the last 10 years. That like sort of everybody has more exposure to everything, or at least that's how I feel. Like I definitely feel like I have more exposure to things that I don't necessarily know about or care about or need to know or care about, but they're just sort of part of my life because they're on social media a lot. Yeah, I don't know. But that said, like, I don't think there's ever been a time in human history where someone wasn't spinning. Like, not for 1 millisecond. You hear a lot of stories of spinners getting asked about it when they spin in public. So you're a bit intimidated doing that. Oh, don't be intimidated. Like, yes, people have questions, but their understanding of spinning is like so incredibly basic that they're not asking you detailed questions. Like you're not going to have somebody come up to you in public on your first day ever spinning in public and being like, so how exactly was that fiber prepared? Or like, how exactly would you recommend washing a skein of yarn? Like nobody's asking questions like that. At most they're asking, what is that? And who taught you? When did you learn? Like that sort of stuff. Like people, they're definitely not going to grill you on it. Yeah. My very first like public facing job, customer service job, was at a 7-Eleven. And my pay was so bad and my boss was terrible. So I did not give a single solitary shit about my work. But what I did care about was the fact that whenever there was downtime, I could just pull my spindle out and spin on it. And then from there, I realized that actually I could work the cash register and the scanner one-handed and keep the other hand on my spinning. So like after a month or two, I was literally just spinning nonstop at work or knitting nonstop at work. And the only thing that would stop me was my boss coming in because he would yell at me whenever he saw me doing that. But he didn't come in often. So I spent a very long time like scanning people's stuff one-handed while they looked at me in utter bemusement. Like, why is this guy tied up to a stick? Why did he do that? And very few people actually asked. Like, they were all visibly confused, but most people just rolled with it. They didn't want to know, which I can respect that. I think that's pretty funny. It's more a being perceived in public thing. That's fair. Yeah. It does make you stand out a little bit for sure. I get that. For me personally, once I started having to use mobility aids full time, I feel like that ship kind of sailed already. So it's like I'm in a big beefy power chair right now, and that's the first thing people see if I'm on a street is they see my power chair. So if they actually get past the seeing the power chair bit and notice what I'm doing with my hands, I consider that a win because they pretty much only ever see the power chair. So I've gotten, I don't know, exposure therapy. Exposure therapy I didn't ask for or want, but I mean it worked, so whatever. I think I'm gonna need to like actually clean my spinning wheel at some point because I got it like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe, and I haven't cleaned it once, and I'm sort of feeling some grit in there as I treadle, which is not ideal. I might also just need to oil it, like the bearings. I don't know if you can hear it actually. It's making kind of like a rubbery sound, maybe. I don't know. But I'm not a huge fan. What bobbin am I on? Okay. So I think once I've filled up this bobbin as much as I can, I'll probably call the stream. But that's going to be not for a little while minimum. Like probably another 10, 20 minutes. And then I might get started on making a fly ball. But my legs are starting to hurt a little bit. So. You just hear nice clicks. Well, that's good. That's preferable, probably. I do love the sound of this wheel. Like, I've heard quite a few people's wheels, and I don't think there's such a thing as a bad sounding wheel, although there are some wheels that really have no sound, which I guess is, maybe that's a bad sounding wheel. But there are none that like just sound terrible, you know? But like this one, maybe I'm just, what's the word? Very subjective, but I really love the sound of my wheel. One of my favorite sounds ever. I think I'm gonna switch legs. Give me a moment. I wanna try and keep it so that like it's mostly in frame. It's gonna be a little difficult though. It'd be easier for me. Let's see. Does that help? No. about as good as I can do. All right. The roving's getting very small. I'm very excited. I think I might just need like one more bobbin. That might be enough. Which would be awesome. I don't know if you were here for last night's stream, but this is like not at all what I usually spin. I don't usually spin alpaca. Like I spun it before. I spun multiple different blankets before, but I don't usually do alpaca, and I almost never spin roving, just because I tend to prepare my own fiber. So this is like, it's new, and it's also not really my preference. So I'm excited to get to my naturally dyed Rolex for sure. So like, it's not that I'm not enjoying this. I am enjoying it quite a bit actually, but it is like sort of the entree. No, the appetizer. There we go. It's the appetizer, and then my fun stuff is going to be the entree. And I also still don't know what I'm doing with this. I was talking about it in the last stream, and we came up with some good ideas, like a cowl could be fun. Like a hooded cowl could be really fun. It would make a good blanket warp, which I don't really want to do necessarily. Might make an okay shawl. And I feel like it would make a really nice skirt is the main thing, but I don't know how to make skirts, and I don't know how much yardage it would need. So yeah, I have no clue really what I'm gonna do with this, which is too bad because I find that like it helps a lot with how I spin to know what I'm gonna spin it into. Cowl sounds fun. It does sound fun. I've never done something like that before, and I think like fear of all the shaping that's necessary is what has stopped me in the past. But I've gotten a lot more comfortable with knit shaping and crochet shaping in the last like year or two. And I think I could take something like that on now. And it might even be successful. The only thing is like, this is I don't know how it necessarily shows up on other people's cameras or on other people's screens, but it's like sort of a tan beige, very light brown, and that's not a color that I wear at all. I wear a lot of dark brown and then a lot of black and gray, and that's about it. So I would want to dye this dark brown, I guess would be the easiest to get to, because I'm definitely not going to wear a light brown cowl, but I don't know. I mean, once it's a little late now because we're like not even into spring yet, but once the walnuts start dropping around here, which is going to be sort of late summer, early fall, that would probably be enough. And same with acorns, but they tend to drop around the same time here. And those both make a deep brown. But they also both can like negatively impact how soft it is. So I don't know. That's kind of the problem with like looking with specifically trying to get dark browns, is that a lot of the things that produce the best dark browns also harsh the wool a little bit. And if it's gonna go around my neck, I kind of don't want to do that. So we'll have to see. I could probably also just like really overcook some blackberries. That would probably work too. Yeah, that's my preferred way to spin brown for sure, rather than dyeing brown. Um, the only thing is like the majority of sheep wool is white, um, just because white is obviously the best starting color to dye with, um, or at least like commercially speaking. I really love dyeing with light gray. It makes really beautiful colors, but we've sort of like bred a lot of the uh, more colored sheeps out of existence by specifically seeking white fiber. So actually getting brown fleece um, can be a little bit of a challenge, weirdly. I'm sure that depends on your location. Um, like we have quite a lot of shepherds out here, so not as much as in like the UK, for example. I think they probably have way more, but we've got quite a few because we've got some non-arable land around here. So like it's not impossible to get brown, and I did buy a very beautiful brown Shetland fleece from a local shepherd last year. But even so, oh hello Chuck. My cat has made her appearance finally, totally out of frame, of course. You live in the city, it's an issue finding fleeces. I also live in the city, to be fair. Um, like none of the shepherds that I buy from are in the city. They're just in the surrounding area. Cat. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get her to actually be in frame maybe. She's kind of underfoot, so I have to stop treadling. um, you have two vague leads. That's good. At least you have some leads. And Etsy is like, while not ideal, it is a pretty reliable place to find fleece. The downside being like you can't really feel it, although some places will send you samples. Not a lot, but some will. But that's where I started. Like that's where I started buying full fleeces when I got into fleece spinning was from Etsy, and I only moved to um, locally buying once I went to a local like fiber festival and realized there's a ton of farms around here and I should just buy from them. That's the other thing actually, is if there's any fiber festivals around you, um, there are deals on fleeces there. Like definitely something to look. I know not everywhere has local fiber festivals. If there are any in your area, and like mine is not in my city, it's in a city a couple hour drive away, so I wouldn't be able to get there now. But um, in the past, that's what I did. So, and that was, and you have to keep a very tight hold on your wallet. The wool you got was so far away on an online shop that you heard of. It's good, but you have no idea what kind of sheep they're from or anything. Oh, that's too bad that they didn't label it in a helpful manner. I mean, when you're learning wool is wool, it doesn't matter a huge amount. But yeah, ideally, you'd at least know the breed. Also, alpaca, which you like. Yeah, alpaca is fun. It definitely feels different than spinning wool. And I think I prefer wool, but I don't turn down alpaca necessarily. I got to adjust my chair a little. Everything I do, thinking that it's gonna like be more. Ugh, oh well. I don't know if you caught it when I said it, because it shows. But anyway, I don't know if you caught it. But once I'm done with this bobbin, I might end the stream. My legs are starting to hurt a little bit. I might get started on a little bit of ply ball winding, because I do need to free up these bobbins. But I don't really know how to film that. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. But probably another like 10 minutes minimum. I feel like I've like finally settled into a fairly consistent thickness. The problem is it's not the thickness, like it's not particularly close to the thickness that I was doing at any other point in my spinning. So if like the last little bit of this bobbin might be consistent, no other part of it, which checks out for my spinning. One thing that I do really appreciate about this roving is that there's like no VM in it. And I really hate sweeping, but I also like obsessively sweep multiple times a day. Or if I'm at work, then like at least once. It seems kind of egregious for also working a full-time job. But that's where I am currently, and I'm not super looking forward to when I move on to the next thing, because like I got a lot of the VM out when I was carding it, but I definitely did not get all of it out. So this is gonna be like VM City after a spinning session when I move on to the next thing, which is kind of too bad. The main thing I think is that like it gets in my clothes, and then I have to, but also it's totally unavoidable. The worst example of that I ever encountered was this beautiful deboulé fleece. So I think that's a cross between a deboulé and maybe a Dorset. I'm not sure on the second one, but so it's a super fine, super soft, super fluffy, like absolutely beautiful breed. And I found one on Etsy for like crazy cheap, like I think $10 a pound of unwashed deboulé. And to be fair, you do lose a lot of that in lanolin. So I think I ended up with like a 40% yield, like 30 or 40% yield after the lanolin and the dirt had been washed out. But then I was sitting there like, yay, it's all washed. I can finally use it. It'll be perfect. It's gonna be so soft. A lot of it was like thistles, actually. Was to individually card each lock, like open up each lock on my hand cards, and then put them in a pile, and then from there make roll lags. But like, it was such a nightmare. I had so many splinters, Like so many splinters that I couldn't even see to remove because they were such fine particulate. It was just an absolute nightmare. Which is why, like, if I'm buying a fine wool at this point, if I haven't seen it in person, I only buy jacketed fine wools because, like, otherwise it's almost impossible to get VM out, and you'll have many splinters in the meantime. Yeah, it was terrible. Like, at least I didn't spend a lot of money on it. That's the one good thing. But I basically ended up wasting like 2 pounds of unwashed wool, or 3/4 of a pound of washed wool, because I just couldn't work with it. Like, it was honestly hazardous. And it sucks because when I did get it like perfectly clean, it was like buttery soft, so beautiful, so not worth working with. Yeah, it was such a shame. It was terrible. But lesson learned. Um, I think the reason why it was such an issue was like, so I've worked with a lot of different kinds of fleeces. And I've worked with different amounts of VM in each fleece. Like, it changes from fleece to fleece and sheep to sheep and shepherd to shepherd. But the coarser wools, they're more open, so there's more chance for debris to just fall out, like over the course of the year while the sheep is growing its fleece. Some of it will fall out. While handling, some of it will fall out. While shearing, some of it will fall out. Like the web, I guess, is just very open. It allows a lot to pass through. Comparatively, the fine and especially the ultra fine types of sheep fleece, like there's no room whatsoever, and they also tend to produce a lot more lanolin as well, and that stickiness helps trap things in too. So fine wool breeds are gonna, unless they're coated, they're typically gonna have like more and worse VM. And like the big difference is that on a really VM-y coarser fleece, so say a Jacob fleece, the stuff that falls out is the fine stuff, and the like actual literal twigs and leaves is what stays in, and those are easy to pick out, so that's fine. But like none of that stuff, like not the twigs or leaves, but then also not the thistles, not the splinters, none of that falls out of a fine wool fleece. So it's just kind of a nightmare to work with. If you have hand combs, then at least you'll have a better way to process it. Like, I did eventually buy a pair of hand combs and get through quite a lot of that AA fleece on the combs, but even so, I was still getting splinters. It's just that my resulting fleece got cleaned a lot faster. So, yeah, not worth it, in my opinion. I mean, I guess worth it in terms of I learned a valuable lesson. And like, there's no issue buying long wool fleeces, or not long wool, buying fine wool fleeces that you've like been able to touch and both visually and like with your hands assess what kind of VM it's got going on. That's fine. But online, no way. At least not for me. Not doing that again. That's good to know. It's not like you don't use your hands for spinning afterwards too. Exactly. That was the big thing, is like my hands were covered in Band-Aids, just trying to stop myself from like repeatedly catching the splinters on things, which makes it really hard to spin, but also like they just hurt really bad because of all the splinters. So spinning it was kind of a pain afterwards. It was unfortunate. I don't think I've made like a big error like that in a while, though. I don't know. It wasn't an error. It was a learning experience. But I haven't had as impactful of a learning experience like that in a while, I guess. It's hard to know what a good balance is of talking and nice spinning wheel noises. But if you'd rather listen to the noises a little more, or if you'd rather I talk a little more, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Sometimes I stop talking just because I'm listening to the spinning wheel noises. So. It's good? Okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know. Well, I do want to show off my spring frames once I finish this bobbin though. I've had multiple attempts making them in the past, and I never got very far, but this time I think I'm finally onto a winner frame. And I think it really is just the fact that the wood was cut so recently. There's still sap and everything. I was discovering sap all over my hands when I started making bread this morning, which was not what I was going for. Maybe that's why my bread turned out so badly. That's what I'm gonna blame it on. Definitely not the multitude of errors that I made. It was the sap. Gotta be. Every time I look down at the roving basket, it's considerably smaller. Very pleased. Very pleased indeed. I realized I started snapping my fingers in rhythm with the wheel. That's awesome. That's very cool. I feel like that's something that I would sort of unconsciously do if I was ever listening to someone else spin as well, or like tapping my thigh or something like that. It's such a good, such a good sound. It's also really hard to keep up a consistent rhythm though, I will say, spinning. We're getting up there. Let's see, I think I might switch to my other slightly less full bobbin and fill that one up a little more. Because I feel like I could spin for a little bit longer, but this bobbin is almost done. So let me just add a little extra twist here. Might as well bring that in the frame. So here they are, side by side. I think it should be fairly clear that this one is a little bit more filled out, and this one is sort of lacking on the sides. So how much of roving did I begin with? I started out with 7.5 ounces according to the label, although that said I didn't actually weigh it. But they're usually not that far off. So yeah, 7.5 ounces. And then when I weighed it before starting the stream today, it was 4 ounces, approximately 4 ounces. My kitchen scale is not super reliable, but yeah, approximately 4 ounces is what I had left. So I think I'm guessing I'm now at about like 2 ounces left, which is about one bobbin. So not cooperating. Come on. Okay. I think 7.5 ounces of roving is definitely one of the larger amounts I've worked with, like just um, from one source. The most I think is, I believe, 10 ounces of Icelandic roving that I got for $10, which is why I bought it, even though I'm not much of an Icelandic spinner. I was like, well, $1 an ounce. You really can't beat that price. Yeah, it is a big chunk. It's a big chunk of roving. It's a big chunk of it done. And I think that 10 ounce of Icelandic, it really turned into a slog pretty quickly, especially because I ended up four-plying it, like cable plying it. So spin 10 ounces and then ply 10 ounces and then ply 10 ounces again is what I did with that. And that was not super fun. So yeah, I don't recommend cable plying any yarn that you're already feeling very done with, because you'll be resenting it near the end. It made a nice yarn, I will say that. And I think it mostly made a nice yarn because I cable plied it. But even so, I don't think I'm going to do Icelandic again for quite some time. It's also just not a wool that I particularly enjoyed spinning. That, like, when you buy Icelandic roving, a lot of the time the tog and the thell are mixed together. Whereas, like, any sort of hand prep, you usually try and avoid that. But with this one, they were very mixed together, and there's a lot of tog, which is the rougher, like, outer garter hairs, and relatively little thell, which is the nice soft inner hairs. And so it was just sort of like texturally kind of plasticky almost. Similar to what I imagine like spinning human hair would be like. Like if the human in question had very dry, thick, coarse hair, like that would be unpleasant. And so was the Icelandic for that reason. With that said, though, like if I didn't keep my head shaved to about like a couple of millimeters, ideally, and then a couple centimeters when it grows out, if I didn't keep it that shaved, I would absolutely spin my own hair, like 100%. Like just to try it at least. I just want to know. I've considered spinning my cat's hair, although I just don't I don't think it would really hold together. So that's why I haven't. But one of my coworkers keeps bunnies, and she gave me a bag like of mixed bunny fur to spin. And just like a small bag, basically just to sample it and see if I could spin it. And if I could, I agreed that I would like spin some more for her just to have. And I could, and it was actually quite fun. You could totally tell it was hair though. It was interesting. Like wool and an alpaca, and some other like mustelids and camelids are really very singular in terms of having nice spinnable fibers. Not much else is like that. My cat does have short hair, yeah. And it's like, I don't know, maybe an inch and a half staple length, and I've spun wool with a staple length that short. It wasn't very easy, but like the fact that it stuck together made it much more spinnable, whereas short cat hair I think really wouldn't spin. Bunny hair though, on the other hand, the bunny hair was like also the same staple length, but it held together. Like it wasn't strong at all, but I didn't think it would be. But it was quite spinnable, and it was pretty soft. One of her bunnies is gray, and that one has really nice soft fiber, and that was the spinnable stuff. And then her other bunny has like white and brown and gray, which is the color of my cat actually. And that one had really coarse and less spinnable fiber, and it like stuck out of the yarn like crazy. So it looked like super spiky almost. I think I posted a picture of it, and somebody was like, "It looks like a soft cactus," which is accurate. um, but yeah, hopefully she's gonna like keep collecting it, and this time keep it separate so that I can see what just the gray bunny hair is like. Because it really was like almost luxury fiber soft and so warm, so warm. Um, Ideally, I kind of want to, uh, and this would take an awful lot of fiber, so I don't know if I'll do it. But if she provides me with enough fiber, and I stay working there long enough, I kind of want to knit her a hat out of her bunny hair. I hope she wouldn't find it weird. I would probably ask before I did anything like that, but I feel like she would enjoy that, and it would be super nice and warm in the winter. I know, right? It'd be adorable. And if she is grossed out by the idea of wearing a hat made of her bunny's fur, then I might just make like, I don't know, a sweater for one of her bunnies. Like that wouldn't be gross, right? That I feel like that would be pretty safe. Otherwise, I really have no idea what to make with a bunny fur yarn, because like it's not Angora rabbits. She doesn't have Angora rabbits. She just has like mixed breed rabbits. Um, and if it was Angora, that would be one thing. Like you can use Angora for almost anything that you'd use any delicate wool yarn for. But like random rabbit fur, I don't think that's the case there. So actually, we've got a comment. Let's see. At one point, I ended up on hand spinning Reddit, and can I spin my old pet hair to keep a memory of them was a pretty frequent question. Yeah, that's not surprising, honestly. Um, I'm also on the hand spinning subreddit on occasion. and I haven't found that particular question, but not shocking. Like, I I think if my knock on wood, but I think if my cat starts getting sick, um, and certainly when she starts getting up there in years, I will probably start collecting her fur and see if I can spin something out of it to keep it. I don't think it's odd, honestly. Like, the whole tradition of keeping a lock of hair, like human hair, that's been going strong for like at least a couple of thousand years, right? So I feel like keeping a lock of your pet's hair, same thing if they're beloved to you, um, and then spinning it. If you know how to spin, why not? In lockers, yeah, lockets. I don't remember what they're called, but yeah. Um, and I think like sometimes people would also tie it up in ribbons and then keep it like just in sort of a keepsakes box was a common one. I mean, I'm sure the method for keeping hair um, has changed over the centuries. There was a while in, I believe, the 1800s, but don't quote me on that, where hair art was a thing. So, like, you would give a hair artist some hair that you wanted to be turned into art, and they might like arrange it on a glue surface or some other kind of sticky surface into art, um, which is interesting. It's very like I don't know. I think that for some reason that grosses me out a little bit, but none of the other ones do. There's just something about like handing it off to somebody else who's totally emotionally unconnected from the situation. I wouldn't enjoy that very much, but yeah, people have been doing weird stuff with hair for a while. You had very long hair at one point, so you get that. What can you do with it? Well, um, I know you can like one of the actually functional uses for human hair, particularly long human hair, is that you can use it basically to replace nylon um, for durability in yarn. I have never seen anything about like basically adding it to the wool prep. And because of my own lack of long hair, I can't try it myself. It seems like it was mostly held alongside other yarns. So, like for socks, for example, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries, you would often have, like, for example, if you were a sailor and your wife was making you socks, she'd probably put some of her hair in there, like hold along a single or sometimes even multiple strands of hair alongside the yarn. Um, and because human hair is both very, very strong and very abrasion resistant, which are both things that nylon does for socks. So, and I assume like it wasn't just a romantic thing. I would totally do that with my own socks, like in a heartbeat. If I had long hair to do it with, all of my socks would have my hair alongside it for sure. I know, right? It is fascinating. Um, Another thing that was often used was horsehair. Horsehair is usually quite a bit rougher than human hair, so like it's not as fine. Um, it's probably not quite as comfortable, especially if there's a large amount of it compared to the wool. But yeah, like horse tail hair or mane hair would both be used for that sort of thing, and they would be used in jewelry making sometimes too, like in making little pendants. There's a couple of, I believe, Iron Age finds that are like horsehair belts, and it makes me wonder, like, why not human hair belts? Like, not saying that I'm interested in doing that now, but like in the past, I wonder if if anyone else thought of that and was doing it. Especially like if you've got a really pretty hair color, like why not, right? I guess it probably comes down to sort of the cultural practices around hair at any given time. Yeah, it's crazy. You get into spinning thinking like, there's sheep, and maybe there's alpaca. Maybe you've heard of like spinning yak fur, and you know about cashmere, like the big ones, And then there's also human hair. There's also like vicuna. There's so many weird random creatures, humans included, that yield workable fiber. It's very cool. I know it had to have happened at some point. Like at least one other person was as weird about it as I am and tried it. It's got to be. Cannot just have been me. I think personally, I would be a little too grossed out to work with anybody's hair other than my own. Like, my sister has definitely longer hair than I do, although it's not long. And she probably would give me her hair if I asked, but I would feel really grossed out trying it. I don't know why. Now you're wondering, since horsehair is used for violin bows too, has human hair been tried? I feel like I read into that as a kid because I used to play the violin. And if I remember correctly, and this would have been a while ago, so I might not be, but one, it was done. It was just inferior to horsehair because it wasn't quite as strong. Like horsehair is really very strong, and human hair, while strong, it's not super strong. But two, there is an incredible murder ballad that I grew up listening to by Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings that is about making a violin out of a human corpse. And at one point, the violin is indeed, like the bow is strung with human hair, and in some versions, the violin itself is strung with human hair. So yes, basically. Yeah, do you The Wind and the Rain, yeah, do you listen to that song? That's really cool. It's not a song like most people have recognized when I've described it to them. So that is awesome. I love that song. You love ballads. Yeah, I love ballads too. I grew up like almost exclusively, well, on a mixture of almost exclusively murder ballads and Radiohead, which I'm sure did something very weird to my psyche. But I can't get enough of a good murder ballad. You learned to play it, but never dared to play it to your sister in case that'd be weird. Yeah, might be. Might be a little weird. That's hilarious. I remember because, I was listening to it as a kid because that's when my parents were playing music that I would listen to. And I have a sister. And we would both, when listening to it, just sort of give each other this side eye. And at the time, I interpreted it as don't worry, I would never toss you in a lake and then allow somebody to turn your cleaned corpse into a violin. But in retrospect, I don't think that's what she was thinking. I think she was thinking more like, you'd make a great violin. It was a very annoying younger brother, so it's quite possible. Yeah. Yeah. Such a good song. Okay. Almost filled this bobbin up. There's a tiny bit more space in the middle, but I think I'm gonna call it pretty damn soon. We've reached an hour and 45 minutes again, which is about how long the last one was, which is cool because I really thought that I knew this time, but I'm not, so that's awesome. Pleased about that. There's going to be a lot of quick bobbin changes in succession when I get back to the middle of this thing. I usually like to spin enough to just like wrap around a few good times, because otherwise sometimes it slips and it gets really annoying. Okay, there we go. Now I'm at the middle. So out of curiosity, do you have a spinning wheel or are you using a spindle? If so, what kind of spindle? You have a drop spindle recently too. That's awesome. Very nice. Drop spindling is what I started on too. And I still have quite a fondness for them. I ended up having to move on because they just sort of destroyed my shoulders. But that, unless you have hypermobile shoulders, they probably won't do that to you. But I still use them time to time when plying stuff that I spun on my supported spindles. Because supported spindles suck at plying. Like it's not a good tool for plying yarn. But drop spindles are so nice for plying. Like honestly, I feel like one of the ideal plying tools. You want to try supported spindles too. You have one. You noticed you might get sweet. Yeah, you should definitely give it a try. They can be a little harder to get the hang of than drop spindles, I will say. I have a small tutorial on this YouTube channel actually about it, but definitely recommend looking into, like, there's quite a few YouTube tutorials and very little written stuff on the subject, which is kind of too bad, but not surprising to me personally because it's difficult to explain like in words rather than showing. So your shoulders follow, but your wrists tend to hurt quick. Yeah, that's quite fair. It's hard on the wrist for sure. I will say that supported spinning is not necessarily that much easier on the wrists because you have to flick it still. So, but at least it would save your shoulders. And depending on like some supported spindles are okay. Some supported spindles like spin a lot longer and a lot more smoothly, so you don't have to flick it as often. So if you have one of those, or if you end up getting one of those, that may well alleviate your wrist problems. Personally, the type of spindle that I make is one of the shorter spinning kinds, and that's because that's like that's the way of spinning unsupported that I'm comfortable with. So cool. Yeah. The main thing that affects the speed at which it spins, or not the speed, the duration of time for which it spins, is the weight of the spindle, but also like what the tip is made of and what you use as a bowl. So wooden tips don't spin very long, is something that I've learned. Metal tips tend to spin a little longer. And I think ball bearing tips spin like the longest possible, but I may be wrong on that. I've never actually used a ball bearing tip. You think you also hurt yourself just by making big gestures because you don't have enough room. I'm not totally sure what you mean by that. If you mean like splaying your arms out like super far while spinning on a drop spindle, that I definitely understand, because I also messed myself up doing that. But yeah, I never realized how quickly you could destroy a joint until I picked up drop spindling, and ever since my right shoulder is like, it's a nightmare. I think one thing I really wish I knew. Yeah, that's what you meant. Okay, good. Yeah. And I mean, like, you can alleviate a lot of the pain if you're able to change your spinning style, but it's hard. Like, it's legitimately difficult to change your spinning style sometimes. And it's also so much slower, which is why I don't think I ever even really tried when it came to drop spindles. Thigh spinning might be something that would help with like both wrist and shoulder issues. It would require a different kind of spindle, a thigh spindle, which is basically just like a big stick with one end sharpened and the other end can have a hook on it. And basically all you do is you roll it along your thigh, and it can pick up pretty remarkable speeds depending on the conditions you're doing it under. But it also, like, there's no flicking, and you're not holding your hands out or your arms out, so that might also be something to look into. If you find that supported spinning is no good for your hands, which hopefully it is, fingers crossed for sure. But thigh spinning is another cool idea. We're very lucky to live in a time with like such I don't know, such shared knowledge between cultures and between like different cultural spinning practices. Thigh spinning is, if I remember correctly, Navajo. I know it's Native American in some capacity, and I think Navajo, but I'm not positive. And it's not much of a thing in Europe. So, like, you know, if you were asking that question 500 years ago, probably no answer, other than spinning wheel, obviously. But you just want to try working on every spindle. Yeah, I mean, that's a noble goal. Like, same. I feel like I've learned a lot doing that. Like, I tried Turkish, which, you know, that's kind of just like a drop spindle, but the winding is very different. Tried drop spindles, tried supported spindles. I've tried, I don't know if these actually have a name, because they're just something that I've been whittling up, and I've not found anything similar online. But I call them bird spindles. They're just tiny, tiny little supported spindles for spinning really fine flax or cotton. Tried those. Tried spinning wheels, electric wheels. Haven't gotten to try a charca yet. I want to, but I think the hand crank thing is not going to work for me. What else is there? I've tried pushkas, which are basically drop spindle shaped, but you use them as if you're spinning on a supported spindle. And I'm sure there's even more out there, but that's just what comes to mind. Oh, there's spindle sticks. I have tried those, but I don't think I've tried them like fully historically accurately, I guess. There's medieval spindles, which I've tried and failed many, many times and never ever succeeded on. Those are hard. Medieval spinning, like medieval style spinning, is like, I don't know. I don't know what the hell they're doing, is all I can say on that one. All right, I think I'm just about done. I could probably fit a tiny bit more on the ends, but I don't really want to untangle a whole bunch of yarn on stream. I'm sure that'd be a nightmare. Yeah, here's what we got. They both look pretty identical now, which is awesome. I'm gonna load up my fresh spindle real quick. Although I'm not going to be doing any more spinning because I really don't want to overdo it. The ones with no whorl. Yeah, that could be. There's a couple different kinds of no whorl. So spindle sticks don't have a whorl, but also a lot of supported spindles don't have a whorl or a cup or anything like that. And medieval spindles have removable whorls, so I don't know if that counts or not. Yeah, it's hard to say. Oh, I wanted to show. So I don't know if you know what sprang is or sprung. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, honestly. But if you do, I was able to make these sticks. I mean, I didn't make the sticks. The tree made the stick. But I bent the sticks into a sprung thing. And then I simply secured them with some rubber bands. And I'm just going to let them dry like that. And fingers crossed, I can do a little bit of sprung weaving soon. I really want to. It's been such a long time since I did any sprung, and I enjoy it a lot. And it's good for making bags, and I love making bags. That's like my favorite thing to make. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna call it on the stream before we hit 2 hours because that's a little long. But thanks. I'm glad you think it's neat, and also thanks for sticking around for like literally the entire stream. Thanks to anyone else who ended up joining. It's another great stream. Got quite a lot done. Oh, for comparison, by the way. So this is how much we have left, and I can now fully enclose my fingers around it. So definitely made some progress. Yeah. So there's going to be at least one more. At least one more spinning alpaca stream, and then probably a plying alpaca stream. Maybe a couple of those, maybe just one. We'll see. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm always happy to answer any spinning questions. Like I could talk about spinning all day, as is probably very obvious now. We'll happily talk about spinning all day. So, yeah, if you ever want to drop by and ask some more questions, I would be very happy to have you. So I'm gonna end the stream. I hope you have a good night or a good day wherever you are, and I hope you have some good spinning in your future. It is a great subject. Yeah. All right. You take care. Have a good night.